Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a topic that I think a lot of people have heard of,
Mm-hmm.
but probably don't know a whole lot about,
Right.
and that is the world of money laundering reporting officers,
Hmm.
or MLROs as
Mm.
they're known.
Yeah.
So these are the folks who are really on the front lines, making sure that businesses don't become accidental money laundering hubs.
It's become an absolutely critical role, especially with just how complex financial crime has gotten these days.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing when you think about the sheer amount of money
Yeah.
that's being laundered globally each year. We're talking over $2 trillion.
Yeah.
And that's probably just the tip of the
You
iceberg.
say what we know about.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, think about it. Everyone remembered the Wells Fargo scandal from a few years back.
Oh, yeah.
What a mess that was.
Total mess.
Right. And that's a prime example of what happens when AML compliance goes wrong. Reputations get shattered. You've got billions of dollars in fines. It's a complete disaster.
Yeah, it really highlights just how important the MLRO is. They're that first line of defense against this kind of catastrophe.
Mhm.
Their job is to make sure a company follows all those anti-money laundering rules, those AML rules.
Okay, so let's dive in. Our mission today is to figure out what makes a truly effective MLRO.
Okay.
It's got to be more than just checking boxes on a checklist, right?
Absolutely. You got to think of it as this really unique blend of skills and knowledge and a really proactive mindset. You can't just be reacting. You need to be anticipating.
So where do we even begin? I'm guessing education's a good place to start. I mean, you probably need some kind of background in finance or law, right?
It's definitely a very solid foundation, but you absolutely need specialized training in AML on top of that.
Okay.
So that means getting really deep into all those complex regulations like the Bank Secrecy Act here in the US and international standards like those from the Financial Action Task Force or FATF.
FATF. Got it.
Yeah, so you not only need to know the rules, but also how to apply them in the real world.
Sure.
That's where certifications like the CAMS come in. That's the Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialist.
Oh.
It's this globally recognized credential that shows you really have the expertise to handle really complex AML situations.
So that covers the book smarts, I guess. What about real-world experience? You can't learn everything from a textbook, right?
You're absolutely right. There's a lot to be said for really understanding how money actually flows through the system. And you know how criminals are trying to exploit those flows.
So I bet that's where backgrounds in compliance or law enforcement
Exactly.
or financial services really shine.
They've seen firsthand how things can go wrong. They're attuned to those red flags, those subtle signs of suspicious activity that someone without that experience might miss.
It's like they've developed a sixth sense almost.
Yeah.
Speaking of senses, let's talk about the analytical kind.
Okay.
Because I imagine an MLRO spends a ton of their time reviewing transactions, assessing risk, making those judgment calls all day long.
You're spot on. You need to have really strong analytical skills to be able to spot those patterns and anomalies, anything that just doesn't fit. It's kind of like a detective noticing that tiny little detail at a crime scene that everyone else missed. And that's the one thing that unravels the whole case.
Right, and especially in today's world where you've got transactions happening at warp speed across borders, that ability to connect the dots is more crucial than ever.
Absolutely.
But here's something I wouldn't have expected. Communication.
Yeah.
That's got to be a huge part of this role too, right?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. The MLRO is the bridge between their organization and the regulators. And even law enforcement, if things go that far.
So it's not just about being a number cruncher in the back office.
No, not at all. You might have to have some pretty tough conversations, even with high-level stakeholders,
Oh,
if you uncover something suspicious.
so that's where the diplomacy skills come in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see how navigating those situations could be really tricky.
And then there's also the internal piece too, right? You got to be able to explain all these complex AML concepts to your own team.
Absolutely. A huge part of the job is training and raising awareness about the signs of money laundering within your own organization. You're not just a watchdog, you're an educator.
So we've covered education experience, analytical skills, and communication, all vital for an effective MLRO. Is there anything else that really sets the best ones apart?
Well, there's one more crucial ingredient, and that's being proactive. The best MLROs aren't just reacting to issues, they're looking ahead, they're anticipating risks, and they're strengthening their company's defenses before problems even arise.
It's like playing chess almost. You're always thinking several moves ahead.
That's a great analogy. It's not just about putting out fires, it's about preventing them altogether. You really want to build a culture of compliance where everyone understands their role in preventing financial crime.
So to recap, An effective money laundering reporting officer needs to stay informed, develop strong analytical skills, foster open communication, and always be one step ahead. It's a lot to juggle, but clearly a vital role in today's business world.
Absolutely. And it's a role that's only going to become more important as financial crime continues to evolve.
Yeah, it really is about shifting from that reactive mindset to a more proactive one.
So instead of waiting for the alarm bells to go off, you're actively out there looking for weaknesses and reinforcing those defenses before anything even happens.
Right. It's like you're a detective, you're constantly searching for those clues, piecing together the bigger picture. Except in this case, the clues might be hidden in a mountain of financial data.
Yeah, and the criminals are always coming up with new ways to cover their tracks. It's a constantly evolving challenge.
You're exactly right. And that's why staying informed is so crucial for an MLRO. They need to be on top of all the latest trends, any regulatory changes, any emerging technologies. It's a never-ending learning curve. Definitely not a job for someone who likes to sit still. Which makes me wonder just how widespread this problem really is. I mean, we've talked about the financial sector, but money laundering can touch so many different industries, can it?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about everything from real estate and art to online gaming and even cryptocurrencies.
Wow.
Criminals are always looking for new avenues to clean their dirty money, which means that MLROs need to be incredibly adaptable.
It's like they need this panoramic view of the financial landscape, being able to assess risk in all these different contexts.
Exactly. And that brings up another really crucial aspect of the job, and that's collaboration.
Okay.
You can't do this alone. An effective MLRO needs to work closely with other departments within their organization, but also with external partners.
So you're talking about like law enforcement, regulatory bodies, maybe even other financial institutions.
Exactly. Money laundering is a global problem, and it demands global solutions. We need to break down those silos, share information, more effectively work together to close loopholes and disrupt those criminal networks.
It's like you're this central hub, the MLRO, connecting all these different players in the fight against financial crime.
That's a great way to put it. And it's a role that's only going to become more crucial as technology continues to advance. Because with every new development, there's a chance criminals will find a way to exploit it.
Which brings us to a really interesting question. What does the future hold for AML and the MLROs who are on the front lines? What's your take on that?
Well, I think we're going to see a growing reliance on technology-driven solutions, things like artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Okay.
They can analyze vast amounts of data and detect suspicious patterns much faster than humans ever could.
It's like having a digital detective working around the clock.
Right. But technology alone isn't going to solve the problem.
Right, so you still need that human element.
Absolutely. We still need skilled human analysts who can interpret that data, understand the nuances, and make those really critical judgment calls. Technology is a tool, but it's the human element that will always be essential.
I've also heard a lot of talk about blockchain technology and its potential in the fight against money laundering. What are your thoughts on that?
Blockchain is definitely a game changer. Its inherent transparency and immutability make it very difficult for criminals to hide their tracks. Every transaction is recorded and can be traced, which makes it much easier to identify suspicious activity.
So it's like this digital ledger that can't be tampered with. That could be a really powerful tool for following the money trail.
Exactly. And as blockchain technology continues to develop and become more widely adopted, I think we'll see it play an even greater role in AML efforts.
It sounds like the future of AML is this fascinating blend of cutting-edge technology and human expertise. We need the best of both worlds to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. It's going to be a really exciting and challenging time for MLROs. They'll need to embrace these new technologies while still honing their analytical and investigative skills, and they'll need to collaborate more effectively than ever before to combat this ever-evolving threat.
As we're talking about all of this, it really hits home just how much responsibility rests on the shoulders of an MLRO.
It's a huge responsibility, no doubt about it. They're the guardians of their organization's reputation, and they play a vital role in safeguarding the integrity of the entire financial system.
And they have to make tough decisions, often under immense pressure. It takes a special kind of person to thrive in that environment.
It certainly does. Integrity, ethical conduct, a strong sense of responsibility, these are all absolutely paramount for anyone in this role.
Because at the end of the day, it's about doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. It's about protecting not just the organization, but society as a whole from the damaging effects of financial crime.
That's what makes this role so challenging, but also so incredibly rewarding. Knowing that your work is contributing to a greater good can be a really powerful motivator.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to hear about all the dedication and the skill that goes into this line of work. But before we wrap up, I'm curious to get your take on one more thing.
Okay.
Given the sheer scale of money laundering and how global the problem is, what emerging technologies or strategies do you think will be most effective in combating it in the future?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's something that everyone in this field is grappling with right now. It can feel like we're constantly playing catch-up
It does sometimes, doesn't it?
to the criminals.
Like as soon as we close one loophole, they find another one.
It's true. They're always looking for new vulnerabilities to exploit. But the good news is we're also seeing incredible advancements in technology that can help us fight back even more effectively.
Can you give us some examples? What's on the horizon that has you excited?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, artificial intelligence and machine learning are already having a really big impact.
Mhm.
They can analyze these massive data sets of transactions, flagging suspicious patterns far faster and more accurately than humans ever could.
So it really is like having an army of digital detectives working around the clock.
Exactly. And as these technologies continue to develop, they'll become even more powerful and sophisticated. Imagine being able to predict money laundering activity before it even happens.
Wow.
That's the kind of potential we're talking about.
That's incredible. But I imagine technology alone isn't a silver bullet. It's got to be part of a bigger strategy, right?
You're absolutely right. We can't just rely on algorithms. We still need those skilled human analysts who can understand the context, interpret the data, and make those really critical judgment calls. Technology is a tool, an incredibly powerful tool, but it's the human element that will always be essential in this fight.
It's that balance, isn't it? The human expertise combined with the power of technology.
Exactly.
Speaking of technology, we talked a little bit earlier about blockchain.
Mhm.
Do you think that's going to play a major role in the future of AML?
I absolutely do. Blockchain technology is a game changer because of its transparency and immutability. It's incredibly difficult for criminals to manipulate or hide transactions on a blockchain. Every transaction is recorded and can be traced back to its origin, which makes it a very powerful tool for investigators.
So it's almost like a self-enforcing system, like a digital trail that can't be erased.
That's a great way to put it. And as blockchain technology becomes more widely adopted, I think we'll see a significant reduction in money laundering activities simply because it'll become much riskier and more difficult to do.
That's really encouraging to hear. It sounds like the future of AML is this fascinating blend of these cutting-edge technologies and the human skills we've been talking about, the analysis, the communication, the proactive thinking.
Yeah.
It's almost like a whole new breed of financial detective is emerging.
That's a great way to think about it. The MLRO of the future is going to need to be very comfortable with technology, but they'll also need those core investigative skills, that ability to connect the dots to see the bigger picture. And maybe most importantly, they'll need that unwavering commitment to doing the right thing, to protecting the integrity of our financial systems.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about a world I knew very little about before. And for our listeners out there, I hope you're feeling the same way.
It's a complex field, but it's so important to understand the threats that we face and the people who are working tirelessly to combat them.
If there's one thing I want our listeners to take away from this, it's that money laundering is a real and pervasive problem. But there are incredibly smart and dedicated people out there fighting back. And the future of this fight is going to be shaped by technology and human ingenuity.
Absolutely. And remember, everyone has a role to play. Stay informed, be vigilant, and if you see something suspicious, don't hesitate to report it.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure as well.
And to our listeners, thank you for being here. We'll see you on the next deep dive.